Yo, once again, this is Trav and Bias back with you again.
So
The Sports Bag Bros are back. The Sports Bag Bros podcast is back. Hey, it's been a long weekend after these big fights this past weekend.
I
Number
feel
35.
weird, man. I feel weird. Like there's no boxing on our agenda today, and we're
None.
all in on boxing.
Oh, absolutely. All in on boxing. We talk about all the sports that are available, but boxing just happened to be in the hot spot, not only from just this past weekend. We're talking about leading into the fight, other fights. There was so much boxing going on. Hey, we had to get on top of it. You know
Yeah,
what? I
it was a
think you
fight that
all like
deserved it.
they all liked it as well because everybody watched the fight. You're talking about a million people who had bought the fight, these guys getting their money, so we weren't alone.
Right.
So the so-called mainstream, the true boxing fans, the true combat sports fans, they were all down with it. But now we're back in the saddle, getting back to a lot of what we normally would do, which is touch
NFL.
on NFL is here. Talking on the major sports. This is episode 35, the Sports Bag Bro podcast, and it's on. And the NFL, as Bias just said, hey, what's going on now with this NFL? I mean, a lot going on. Sean Payton back on the scene, and he just can't come back on the scene. He has to say something, and he's never been known as that guy that says something. This time around, he's coming back with a little bit of vigor. He's coming back with some mouth, but he does have a Super Bowl on his finger, a ring on his finger, and a Super Bowl in New Orleans at least. With the Broncos, what do you see with this?
Isn't there some kind of code among the coaches? They don't bash or trash each other like he did. I mean, he went in on that kid.
Yeah, I mean, he went in on him, and and once again, this isn't what we've seen from Sean Payton in the past. We remember him mostly for winning the Super Bowl, but we remember what happened with Katrina and how he had pretty much brought the city together and everything that happened with them winning. All of that type of stuff. So he was never looked at as a villainous kind of coach, not a lippy guy, not someone who gets on the bad side, because there are some coaches who don't mind being on the bad side. Not to say that Bill Belichick is one of those coaches, but he says things and you know what he means when he says it, and he could probably rub a coach the wrong way, but they would never say anything against him. But this time around, I mean, Sean Payton decided to say something, and it was about the Jets, but he also mentioned about the previous staff for the Broncos, talking about 20 hands had their hands in the mix and ruined everything. It's not just Russell Wilson. Could this be him kissing up to Russell Wilson? This isn't his guy, but this is the guy he has under contract.
It could be, in a roundabout way, giving him a vote of confidence. Hey, Russ, it wasn't your fault. Or possibly he's getting out in front of them having a poor season. And he's saying, well, I told you from the beginning, I got a lot to fix here. I mean, who knows? Unless he explains why he said what he said, we'll never know the real reason.
Well, he's there now. He has the team he has. He can't give it back. He took the money. Russ is under contract for a lot of money. In my opinion, the deal that brought him there was on the level of Herschel Walker. It might have even exceeded that, the Herschel Walker trade we all know about with the Minnesota Vikings and Dallas Cowboys years ago. But there's a lot to be said in Bronco land. I don't see them as being anything special. Russell Wilson, he is getting older. He is taking steps backwards as a quarterback. I think we saw the beginning of it just last season. I don't know how precipitous a drop it may be, but it doesn't normally get better before, it gets worse.
Right, but he's still young enough where he can right the things he did wrong last year, possibly, and maybe it's just a blip on the map. Maybe he has a run of 2-3 more good years, and then he's towards the end of his career, be like, wow, he just had that one bad season, but he bounced back nicely. But if he has a bad season this year, well, then now he's close to the 18th hole.
Yeah, he might be in the clubhouse because the only thing about him, he wasn't necessarily known as a mobile quarterback, but he could be mobile when he needed to be a mobile quarterback. Mm-hmm. But when you get older, now you can't really be a mobile quarterback, whether you're known to be one or not, or even one of those quasi-mobile quarterbacks. He has to really read defenses, which he has done in the past. This isn't, in my opinion, if it was Lamar Jackson, if he can't do the running, his game is done until he learns how to read defenses completely. Russell Wilson is in that class where he could read defenses well enough. He's done it in the past, but does he have the offense to do it? Does he have the wide receivers that can catch the ball with Jerry Jeudy being his number one guy?
Yeah, we have to wait and see. He'll be under Payton's offense, under his tutelage, and Payton brings a lot to the table. We'll see if Russ can bounce back.
Yeah, man.
The offense is going to be wide open probably. He's got an extensive playbook. He's going to run plays that work. Um, Russ is going to have every opportunity to bounce back.
And I think based on what he's done in his past, I know the past doesn't mean as much, but I think he does deserve the benefit of the doubt, even after having a not so great season last year. Well, Sean Payton was brought in because of that. He's supposed to be that elite coach. He is an elite coach. If you look at his record, even during the COVID season, everybody was pretty much out of sorts during the COVID season in 2021. And, he has an excellent record, period. Playoff record. He has a Super Bowl. He's always in contention every year for a playoff or a high seed in the Super Bowl, in the playoffs. So, this is somebody who should be able to right the ship, or we should be able to see something more noticeable this year than we've seen in previous years since the Broncos haven't been doing anything, particularly with Russell Wilson. This will be a real telltale with a coach who has the offensive mind that he has that should bring out the best in Russell Wilson, even at an older age. Another issue when it comes to the NFL, Johnathan Taylor, Jim Irsay. What is going on with these Indianapolis Colts, man?
I don't know. Like, you can't say that Jim Irsay is wrong, but he was wrong to say what he said. He's talking about Taylor like he's just a piece of meat. He's replaceable, and he referred to himself as being replaceable. Whether that's true or not, you still don't say that about a player. If you want your players to be happy, you don't make that kind of statement. And Taylor's already agitated, and you can imagine how upset he is now.
You're demanding a trade, and you know what? How much of this has to do with a real problem with the Colts and even Jim Irsay? Or how much does it have to do with running backs as a whole being frustrated with the money and the circumstances with their franchise number or their overall number and their usage over, recently, Saquon Barkley issues, the Josh Jacobs issues. Mm-hmm. Now, Derrick Henry jumping into the mix, talking about it, Christian McCaffrey standing up for running backs, but it isn't changing anything. And as you mentioned last week, hey, until 2030, y'all can just sit back and just cry about it.
Unfortunately, it looks that way. Even if that's what you think about running backs or a particular player, you don't talk about players like that. I'm sure there's a lot of players around the league, not just on the Colts, who have very little respect for Irsay now. If I'm a free agent next year, or even if I'm on the market this year and the Colts call, are you going to take that call? I mean, if that's the only call you get, well, yeah, but if you have other options, you're not going to Indy.
But we know about the money issue when it comes down to these players. They're upset one minute, and if the money's right, they're not as upset, and they'll just take the money and grunt. That's probably another circumstance here. Yes, some things are better off not said. This is one of those, but it's now been said. And does Johnathan Taylor, is he the only one upset about it? And as you mentioned, some players that may have wanted to go there, does this really deter them? Does it really rub them the wrong way and they decide not to go? Or does it even open up the door to some of these other owners who may think the same thing? They're in the same line of thought.
I don't know. Irsay seems very outspoken. He's always seemed that way. I think other owners heard that and they probably cringed and like, yeah, you're right, but I wouldn't have said that. So I don't see anybody else coming out in support of his statement.
Oh, nah. I don't think, the only coach I can think that's been more outspoken or just as outspoken and kind of straddled the fence with this kind of rhetoric is Jerry Jones. And that brings us to Jerry Jones and his Dallas Cowboys. What's going to happen this year? I don't know in a predictive sense where we think they're going to the Super Bowl because that's every year since 1995. We don't know that. But looking at what Dak Prescott had said earlier in the offseason about throwing a minimum amount of interceptions, he's guaranteeing it and all that, and then he goes to
was it 10?
Yeah, 10 interceptions.
12, something like that?
I think it's 10, 12. You know what? Hey, it's a nice mindset to have, but it kind of puts pressure on you, to do your job even better. I mean, pressure, you're getting paid to do this. But then he goes into camp and then he throws a pick. He gets razzed not only on social media, makes it even worse. Dallas Cowboy fans, I don't know how they handled it, but anyone who's not a Dallas Cowboy fan, they loved it and they love to razz him over it. But how is any of that going to change with the receiving group he has right now? I mean, CeeDee Lamb, we know about him, and Brandon Cooks, we know about what he's been with, but he's been everywhere, regardless of his blazing speed.
The report I saw stated that the wide receivers are working with Dak to help him avoid interceptions. So that tells me the wide receivers think he's trash. I mean, if the wide receivers got to get together to help the quarterback not throw interceptions, what are we talking about here? That the quarterback's not supposed to throw interceptions.
Exactly. That's your job description. Throw as few interceptions as humanly possible. And there've been quarterbacks who've done that. They've kept it to a bare minimum. But you know what? Dak Prescott hasn't been that bad with interceptions. I think last season was his first year. And I think he set a personal record, a bad record for interceptions last season. And the Dallas Cowboys followed suit. Their receiving core, that's the issue. Do they have those receivers that's really going to make defenses think twice or put fear in defenses' heart when he's back there as the quarterback, when he's known to be a short pass, intermediate pass quarterback? His deep ball has never been really something you've been afraid of.
Yeah. CeeDee Lamb's a really good wide receiver. I'm not sure about the other guys, but, DeAndre Hopkins, when he was down in Houston, he was pretty much the only wide receiver they had, and he put up numbers. So, he has CeeDee Lamb. What else do you want? Not everybody has two badass wide receivers.
Yeah, Brandon Cooks has always been one of those fast guys that still kind of, I don't know why he changes from team to team. He plays very well when he plays with these teams. He has the speed. They talk about it all the time, but yet he's with, 3, 4, maybe even 5 teams. And then they go into the draft knowing they need receivers as well, and they come out with Jalen Brooks from South Carolina, who only played on the 1A level for one season in the SEC, has off-the-field issues, one which kept him out of the Gator Bowl, which I attended, by the way, but, a disciplinary reason. And the Dallas Cowboys, they don't need any disciplinary reasons, especially at a key position like wide receiver when you have Dak Prescott as your quarterback. I mean, this guy Jalen Brooks, has been with 3 different teams. I mean, from Wingate to Tarleton State to South Carolina. And then having issues to not even playing the bowl game, in the Gator Bowl against Notre Dame. I mean, he has other issues. So, and they took him in the 7th round. So I guess they looked at the risk, but you look at his measurables, they weren't all that special either. He ran a 4.58 in the 40 at the combine. He's 6'2", 201, nice size, but not exactly blazing speed. We'll just have to wait and see. Deuce Vaughn, on the other hand,
it sounds like you're describing Ryan Pace's draft picks, the former Bears GM.
But they just don't work out. Just big guys that just linger around and may catch a pass when it's thrown to them, even though it's part of their job description.
One guy he took top 10. I don't think he played for a year and a half or 2 years. And when he did, he didn't do hardly anything.
As laymen, and that's what we are. We're laymen compared to these people in their profession of being scouts and GMs, which is the scout of scouts. What do they see that we don't see on the film? Because we watch football as well, but I'm sure we got a different view of the film because we're watching the game. We don't have isolated videos on the players. But there are players who stand out tremendously in which you don't even need to isolate them, like Randy Moss coming out of college. Anyone could have said he could have been the number 1 pick overall, and whoever had taken him at number 1 would have been justified. But then you get these players that, as you're talking about, with the GM who supposedly put that extra effort into evaluating these players, and they don't turn out to be anything. And it may be the quarterback's fault or just may be a bad pick for a wide receiver.
I think a lot of teams, they fall into the trap of falling in love with prospects or potential draft picks at the combine. Someone might have a decent year in college, and then he comes and runs a fast 40 or a shuttle time or whatever, and they're like, wow, this guy's really athletic. But they don't really pay attention to his route running, his strength, how fast does he get off the line? How does he deal with bump and run? Things of that nature. And, that's what it takes to be a good wide receiver. You can be as fast as possible.
Yep.
But if you get jammed at the line, you're not going anywhere.
Yeah, and that's true. It knocks your timing off. Even if you could get back to speed right away, you'll be off your route, and all of that timing that you work with the quarterback is no longer an issue. In fact, it becomes an issue because you're not there when he's throwing it. And and Deuce Vaughn, the running back out of Kansas State, has been the one who's kind of been not lighting camp up, but he's been something that people have been looking at. If you've watched anything on social media, if you've seen this little guy and you see some of the memes talking about Pop Warner football, the way he's going through the line of scrimmage, he won't be doing that when the season starts or even the preseason, but he will be used as that guy you can get the ball to on the outside. He has that shake. He has that speed. He has those quick feet, kind of like Brian Westbrook from years ago, or even Darren Sproles from the same school, who did a lot of that when he came out and was effective while he was doing it.
Yeah, it's just those small guys. You got to be really careful with them. The Bears had one, Tariq Cohen.
Yeah,
he was explosive, electric. Sometimes then he got injured, and we haven't seen him since. Those little guys, they can't take too much pounding.
Yeah, Tariq Cohen coming out of North Carolina A&T, and HBCU of all places, and he was effective when he was out there. But like you said, you can't keep giving those little guys touches because he's getting hit the same way by the bigger guys every time he gets the ball, and that wear and tear will happen a lot faster to him most times than not. The special ones get past it. When you get players who are just short, not small. I think he was small and short. You get a Barry Sanders who's short, not small. The big legs. Emmitt Smith, the same thing. But Deuce Vaughn, I think he's going to be somebody to look forward to. And on that note, who is someone in the draft that was just drafted in 2023 that you're looking forward to seeing? It doesn't have to be a first-round draft pick. Just an intriguing player that you're just thinking about going into this upcoming season. It doesn't even have to be your team. Just someone you can watch, sit back, and just enjoy.
Honestly, I'm not really thinking about any rookies. The Bears have been so bad. Their line has been so atrocious. They actually improved their line. They gave Justin Fields a couple of weapons. So that's pretty much what I'm focused on. Let's see what Justin can do with some protection and with some weapons.
I'm a Jets fan, so whatever. Take it for what you want. But Bryce Young is the one I'm looking at this season to see how well he does. I know he's the first pick overall, and I think a number of people, even outside of the Carolina Panthers organization or fan base, will probably look at him as well, because I think he may set the stage for running quarterbacks at his size and measurables. In the future that might get drafted, not necessarily that early, but it may open the door for those guys to get drafted more often in the first round and be looked at as someone who could probably save a franchise if that's what Bryce Young turns out to be once he gets into the NFL. And the good thing about it, from the very beginning, they have already announced that he's going to be their starting quarterback. So there's not going to be any looking over your shoulder. There aren't going to be any people wondering when is he going to get in there. They're going to get to see it from the beginning, and hopefully he's better off than what David Carr was down in Houston when they didn't have an offensive line to protect him at all, and it really affected his career to where I believe he didn't get the chance to live up to his potential because he was shell-shocked.
Yeah, now that I think about it, I want to see what Bijan can do. He got all that money.
Yeah.
Let's see. He's supposed to be the top back. Let's see how he can produce.
You know what? I just saw a video of him the other day, and it's crazy that you mentioned that because this is one of the guys I thought probably was taken too early. But with the Atlanta Falcons, playing in that NFC South, he may be able to do some things, but going by what we've seen in camp, the shorts, the helmet, not necessarily the real hitting, the hands were better than I thought because he didn't have to catch like that out of Texas. Go out down the field and catch it. He made a nice, spectacular catch. Now, that's not going to happen all the time. This is against his own team. We don't know whether the team is that bad in the secondary or he's that good catching the ball out of the backfield yet. We'll find out during the preseason. But, yeah, definitely somebody to watch. I think typically running backs are the ones that people are probably more interested in watching or checking out. But for me, Bryce Young, number 1 pick overall, just happens to be the guy. And being the guy once upon a time is somebody named Jimmy Graham, who used to play tight end for the New Orleans Saints. Hey, he's back in the NFL. What's going on? And he's back with the New Orleans Saints. A whole lot older, still 6'7". What is he doing?
I don't know. He was with the Bears and he didn't do much. He caught a few touchdowns. He can still get in the end zone. But as far as him catching 75, 80 balls, I don't see it.
You know what? He's in camp, and I can see him as being one of those players that's in camp but won't make it. You know, they can cut him, and there will be no harm, no foul. And it reminded me of one of your guys from way back when Nebraska, Johnny Mitchell. Remember Johnny Mitchell?
Yes, I do.
I mean, he was a specimen. He's an athlete, but he had some things going on from the neck up. So that's probably why his NFL career didn't turn out the way it should have been. And I remember when he
Chicago, man, where he can't help it.
You know what? Chicago. Now that you think about it, all of this stuff kind of comes to the surface, and you're like, you know what? There had to have been something. Yeah, you think Nebraska, but you had to think something before that. And then while he's playing in the NFL, he's having these issues that the talent is there, but the coaches can't get it out of him. And then I was actually at the camp when he was with the Jets. The Jets gave him an opportunity in camp. Bill Parcells was there, and right as we pull up to the fence to the gate to watch the practice, the training camp, he walks off the field. And Bill Parcells, you just can't do that with him. The same day he was cut, and that was it. And I was like, man, this guy has so much potential, man. And you just don't know what's going on upstairs, man. But you know what? He's never did anything really crazy. But regardless, Jimmy Graham back with the Saints for the first time since 2015. It's a win-win situation. He can at least find out if he can play still, or the New Orleans Saints can find out they got a play that they're going to use as a stopgap, or just someone who's serviceable enough for the right amount of money. And that's
I'm surprised he didn't try to go to Denver, hook up with Payton and perhaps be a Linus blanket for Russell.
You know what? That's a surprise too. Now that you think about it, I mean, I just finished talking about Sean Payton, not even thinking about Jimmy Graham used to play for Sean Payton. He had his best seasons with Sean Payton in his offense. Definitely somebody Russell Wilson could use because he does not have a tight end. I mean, well, I can't say he doesn't have a tight end. Jimmy Graham used to be Jimmy Graham, but yeah, that would have made sense. But you don't know these things until you have some.
If you're gonna take a shot on somebody,
take a shot at somebody. Oh yeah, what?
I'm saying make it the best shot possible.
Exactly. Give yourself the best opportunity possible with everything kind of going against you, your age in particular. But there isn't as much wear and tear on him because he hasn't been in the NFL for quite some time. And so with the NFL, at least putting somewhat of a lid on it for today, because there's going to be so much NFL to talk about as the season. The first preseason game is this Thursday. The Jets taking on the Cleveland Browns in Ohio, the Hall of Fame game in Canton. By the way, yours truly was supposed to be there, but obviously, guess who's not going to be there? But we'll be watching. But yeah, so the football season is officially here when that season starts. But training camps always coming with different storylines, etc. And with that being said, camps opening up in college football as well. I mean, camps all over the place opening up. The rankings pretty much coming out. Georgia, kind of sort of no surprise. They have somewhat of stability there with their backup quarterback, Carson Beck, seeming like he's going to get the nod, even though on occasion Kirby Smart makes it seem like he still has to fight tooth and nail until the final decision is made in August.
Yeah, well, you want your guy sharp, right? You don't want him relaxing. Oh, I got the job. You want him competing and being sharp.
And that's true. Of course, and I understand the mind games. I mean, if you watched anything about Lou Holtz, you know about the mind games. He always had the worst team in college football. Even when he won a national championship with Notre Dame, these guys are just the worst I've ever been around. Okay. And then he just blasts teams. And, he's done that. And he's motivating coaches and these coaches that don't get too high on themselves. And I think Kirby Smart is one of those guys now that he has back-to-back championships with a possibility of a third in a row. It's going to be harder this year. He doesn't have as many NFL players on the high end, but he definitely has NFL players on the roster. Coming with a new quarterback who's been in the system long enough, who knows the system, has the so-called arm talent everyone likes to use after they've been listening to Mike Mayock for a couple of years. And the other teams out there, you still have Ohio State and you still have LSU, which I don't believe belongs that high, but you do have Michigan. I mean, you have Alabama's always there. I mean, Alabama's always there, like a good neighbor. State Farm is there. Alabama too.
Yeah, usually the preseason polls, they don't mean that much. But usually there'll be two teams out of that top five that will still be there at the end. If not, maybe just one team. So, Ohio State and Michigan, they play each other.
Mhm.
So one of them automatically probably is not going to be there. And the SEC schedule, it can be rough. So who knows? Georgia has a new quarterback, even though he's been in the system. They could get knocked off.
Yeah,
I'm sure Saban has revenge on his mind. I mean, two chips in a row for Georgia.
yeah.
I know he wants to break that up.
Oh yeah, he doesn't want that third one to come because he hadn't done it himself. He's gotten the
Right.
do-over, but he hasn't gotten the trifecta, and he doesn't want Georgia to get the trifecta under his watch. While he's out there trying to put his team back into the championship contention, which they will be more than likely if their offense can really pick it up from the quarterback spot. They have issues of their own, and I think that's the reason why there are other teams that are waiting and have real opportunity to get to the national championship game, because the quarterback circumstance, as we said right now, Georgia isn't completely solid. It's probably the best of all of the others, but Alabama still has three quarterbacks in which I don't think they figured it out by now based on what I've seen, from spring training or spring practice. And, I guess I haven't seen much in the summer yet, but going by just what was out there, man, there's still a lot to be desired. Luckily for them, they'll be able to get their bearings about them with their defense as these guys get acclimated to college football, as their pansy schedule starts off like everyone else and then ultimately gets into SEC play. But you were talking about how these teams that, a SEC team probably might, get into the championship game, or even a Big Ten team, you have the canceling out between Ohio State and Michigan. Probably not the case, because remember, the SEC kind of made a routine out of the top team may lose, and then they might lose again, and they'll just fall out of the top three, but still be in the top four to go to the playoff.
Yeah. It's crazy, that league is so tough. When one team loses, they usually don't fall too far.
No,
they usually don't fall too far.
And they're getting tougher as of next season, after this season, when Texas and Oklahoma comes in, they'll be tougher only because those are big name teams. But, do those teams even put a dent in what the top tier of the SEC is right now? Because it's still going to be consistently Georgia and Alabama. Now, LSU is trying to be more consistent, and I think they have the ability to do it. Brian Kelly has done a very good job recruiting, so it doesn't look like they're going to go away anytime soon, as long as someone can come in at quarterback when Jaden Daniels leaves, and Nussmeier, in my opinion, can handle the job right now. But if anything happened to Jaden Daniels, he can handle the job, and there's still 2 more seasons to him doing big things in LSU. And the SEC is just like that, man. Everybody else fighting for the middle of the pack, but they're still better than most. And the Big 12 is one of these things we talk about now. And Colorado leaving the Pac-12 to go to the Big 12, go back to the Big 12. Do you have anything to say about that? I mean, these musical chairs, no matter what the geography is, just happen to fall where the chips may.
I think, there's talk that UCLA and USC might be leaving. So they're probably trying to get out in front of it. But they also figure, well, Oklahoma and Texas are leaving, so it's going to be an easier conference.
But you know what? I mean, the Big Ten has already made the move. UCLA and USC are going to the Big Ten. Like I'm saying, geography doesn't mean anything anymore. I mean, pride doesn't mean anything anymore. Does a Rose Bowl even mean anything anymore? I mean, with all of those teams leaving the Pac-12, you're going to have 9 teams left when all is said and done. I mean, and then you look at Washington, Oregon, FSU, and Clemson possibly going to the Big Ten. Forget the geography of it. If
that's a logistical nightmare, man.
It is. It's a logistical nightmare in terms of traveling, the money it will cost to travel. I mean, all of that plays into the hands. But with Colorado, and Dan Lanning, from Oregon, the head coach of Oregon, he made kind of sort of a comment at Pac-12 Media Day saying, like, pretty much, who cares that Colorado's leaving? They hadn't done anything, and that's looked at as a slap in the face, which it should. But when you consider the source, really, this is a guy going into his second year of being a head coach, coming from Georgia, so he knows how it is to win. He's been with Alabama, so he's also won there when they won a championship in 2015. Been there with Georgia, defensive coordinator, offense, outside linebackers coach. So he knows a thing or two about winning, but he's not in a position right now at Oregon to say what he's saying with a 3-loss team from last season, 2 losses in the conference, and Oregon not having won a national championship, well, ever. Not to mention those bad uniforms every year. At some point, you're going to get have an eye stroke.
But getting back to the Big Ten and FSU, Clemson, perhaps Washington. I mean, if that happens, you already have Rutgers up in the Northeast. You have Florida State down in the Southeast. You'll have Washington up in the Pacific Northwest. I mean, man, I would not want to be the schedule maker for that league.
Exactly. I mean, teams going, West Coast to Midwest or West Coast to the Southeast. I mean, what part of the season do you want to do it? Who gets the advantage if you did it that way? It's going to be crazy. But typically when
I can hear coaches crying. Let's say Ohio State goes to Rutgers in late November and Michigan goes to Florida State. You know what I'm saying? Ohio State's going to be, we got to go up and play in this bad weather.
Yeah.
It's 10 degrees, it's snowing. And then they
down in the sun.
Michigan State, Michigan gets to go down. What? It'll be 75 degrees.
Pretty
or
much
something.
A bowl game. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, coaches whine. It's just going to give them more ammo.
More ammo, but also more money for the conferences, and that's the reason why it's done anyway. These teams are moving around. There's really no strategy to it, at least on the surface. You know what it's all about. Because if I didn't know anything at all, I would wonder why would this team go to the Midwest? Man, it's the television market. That's what it's about. Why do you think Rutgers even matters in the Big Ten? You're in that New York television market. They're in Jersey, but the tri-state area of New York, Jersey, and Connecticut. That's a lot of money. That's a hell of a hub in that area. In fact, one of the most populous areas in the entire country is that New York, Baltimore, that area there. The most people in the country live in that little area. So the television markets matter. More money to be had. And we're seeing these television deals, $1.some billion for college football.
Right. Rutgers football tradition wasn't the reason they were invited to the Big Ten.
Well, if you talk about just having the first game in college football history, that might account for something. But
tradition, that one game is not a tradition.
Yeah, one game isn't going to do it. Hey, but you know what? That Rutgers is there, but it's all about that television market. And Florida State, because they have such big audiences with their football team, and they get a pretty decent amount of national games, because that Tallahassee market. Come on, but Florida State, being the brand that it is the reason why you would want Florida State in your conference. Their basketball team does a lot.
I talked to you about me trying to get down there for a game to see Chief Osceola and Renegade do their thing. If they're playing Nebraska, I am there. I promise absolutely. You, I would be there. I'll take the whole week off.
And if they go to the Big Ten, that's exactly what's going to happen.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Those are really huge matchups because you can even just bring up the national championship game from 1993, Nebraska versus Florida State. If you can't find anything, people are always trying to find these storylines to make the game more interesting than it should be. And with Matt Rule at Nebraska, we're talking about a possibly much better Nebraska team, not only going into this season, but only getting better in subsequent seasons if he could stay there. And, that would be a huge game between Florida State, whether it's in Lincoln or down in Tallahassee. I mean, it's going to bring – first of all, Lincoln, they're always going to bring out the bodies regardless of who's playing. And Tallahassee, kind of sort of the same thing, but the buzz is back in Tallahassee. They're better now, and that's why it will be a huge game. And so, sticking with the college football theme and kind of staying with the Big Ten, the Northwestern saga continues. Skip Holtz has been brought in as a special assistant, and it doesn't really matter because Skip Holtz, first of all, he's Lou Holtz's son if you don't keep up with college football. And if you keep up with any type of college football period, you know who Lou Holtz is. But Skip Holtz hasn't done much of anything. I remember him at UConn. I most recently remember him down in South Florida when he was down there after Jim Leavitt had left. He took over and didn't do much of anything. So they're bringing him over to Northwestern, and I'm wondering if they're going to try to eventually make him the head coach there now that they're going through their issues. And in the past 2 hours, I've seen a report that Northwestern has now hired their own attorneys to do an internal investigation of what we've talked about for now 2 weeks, maybe even more now, all of the crap going on inside the Northwestern program. Of all places, it's Northwestern.
Yeah, I don't know what Skip Holtz's thoughts are as far as does he want the job? He doesn't know what the punishment's going to be, how severe they'll be. Right now, he may be thinking, yeah, I'll take this job, Big Ten, et cetera. But once the punishment comes down, he might be singing a different tune.
Yeah, exactly. But you know what? His father has been in the mix with those things over the past in his career. I mean, Lou Holtz has left carnage behind with the NCAA, almost with each team he's been with. I mean, the only reason why he couldn't do it with the Jets is because they're not a college team, but he still left it in ruins. I mean, they've been in ruins. but Skip Holtz, hey, I just wanted to mention that his name is out there. Another Holtz is out there, and I would not be surprised to see that he becomes the new coach, even though they have an interim coach so far. When everything is said and done, he may just stick his head into that coach's room and become the head coach of the team. And staying with the Big Ten, well, PJ Fleck of Minnesota, another coach that's been doing big things of late, especially for Minnesota Gophers standards and even NCAA standards. He's being looked at now as running a toxic program. I say this because this is now another Big Ten team, another team you probably wouldn't expect to have this toxic culture, but who are we to decide who should have a toxic culture or who shouldn't? But you would think it would be one of the schools that come across as more rambunctious. You know what I mean? The college atmosphere is just out of hand, and you can just point to a school and be like, you know what? We see them on game day. They're always acting crazy, so we're not surprised. Minnesota isn't one of those schools. Northwestern isn't one of those schools that you would think of that immediately. But with this,
what are they saying about Minnesota?
Well, they're just talking about a toxic environment, a toxic culture with Minnesota football. So apparently, I'm not going to say the same things that are happening at Northwestern, or at least the accusations, but something that they deem is toxic. So I don't think there are any specifics out there, because PJ Fleck wants to get in front of this before it becomes a Northwestern circumstance where people are doing all the speculation before everything is completely out there, and then all the lawyers and whatnot get in place. That's something kind of to keep an eye on right now because of what's going on at Northwestern. It seems like, hell, more and more teams are having this kind of cultural thing happening. And is it a sign of the times where maybe the same thing happened 25 years ago, but people were a little more accepting of it, whereas now we're in a different culture where everybody's offended by everything, and this might just fall under the category now. Northwestern deal, everybody should be offended by the reports of things that happened there. But, I mean, as a whole, everybody's coming up. We don't know whether the accusations are frivolous, whether with Minnesota or even the next school that comes up, or just the way things are now. It is that bad because there's a microscope on everyone, because everyone has a cell phone. Everyone has some type of way to see what's going on.
Well, as you know, I'm in Big Ten country, Northwest Indiana, just 10 minutes from Chicago. And so I've seen some Minnesota games. They've played Nebraska. And you can't tell that they have a toxic culture on game day.
Yeah, exactly.
Those kids they get along well. They play well for each other. They get excited for each other when someone makes a play. I don't see it on game day. Obviously, I'm not there in the locker room. I'm not there for practices. But you would think there would be a residual effect if there was.
Yep. It'll have to come from somewhere. It wouldn't just spring up on you. You'll get to see kind of some signs, and then when it gets there, you'll be like, you know what? I'm shocked, but I'm surprised, but not shocked. When it finally does happen. Mm-hmm. And staying in the Big Ten, because hey, we're talking a lot of Big Ten football in some roundabout way today. And Maryland, by the way, another one of those Big Ten teams that if Florida State were to come, would be a former nemesis of Florida State when they were in the ACC. Maryland was in the ACC, and Rutgers, and all these teams. So was Rutgers in the ACC? I don't think they were. They were in the Big East.
I don't think so.
They were in the Big East. But you have Tua Tagovailoa, his brother, Tua. I don't know how to pronounce this guy's name. Tulia Tagovailoa. Man.
Tagovailoa.
Tagovailoa, man. There may be some editing going on tonight. For real. I gotta get out of this mess. Either way, quarterback at Maryland right now. I remember when he was at Alabama, when his brother was at Alabama. I thought it would have been one of those hand the baton off, but he wasn't going to beat out Bryce Young. That's probably why he left. But he said he was offered $1.5 million by an SEC team. So that team remains unsaid or unknown, but not hard to believe. This is the NIL era. This is what happens. This is even more acceptable now than it's ever been before. Why is it even news?
It just makes you wonder, why didn't he accept it?
For real.
Did Maryland offer more? Or does he have an axe to grind? I don't know.
Well, his brother makes a whole bunch of money. The money's in the family, so he's not hurting for it. But you want your own money. But $1.5 million, I looked at it initially. I was like, that is a lot of money. But then you think about the times we're in. And right now,
if somebody thought that much of you and you decide you want to go somewhere else, why come out and put a negative light on it?
I'm wondering which team it is. I think he threw it out there because there's a team that might have wanted him there. Now, I don't think he says it if Vanderbilt called him. If Vanderbilt said, here's $1.5 million to come to Vanderbilt, I don't think he talks about it if he didn't take it, because first of all, he wouldn't take it because they're Vanderbilt and they're just not good in football, not consistently. They did better than usual last season, and they are making improvements, giving their coach an extension. But I'm wondering if it was Alabama, the team he used to be a part of. And the reason why I think that is because during the offseason, early in the offseason, after spring practice, there were stories about Tyler Van Dyke from the Miami Hurricanes going to Alabama. And there wasn't much speculation after Tyler said, yes, that was a real option. So when they didn't get Tyler Van Dyke, it's not hard to look and say, you know what? Why not go after another quarterback who's familiar with our system, even though Sarkisian isn't there anymore as an offensive coordinator when Tua was there, when Tagovailoa was there, and bringing him back down to Alabama. So everyone kind of thinks it's Alabama because they are in a situation with their quarterback right now. I think Ty Simpson ultimately gets the job at some point this season because I believe he's the best at playing quarterback, not being a running back who happens to throw the ball on occasion.
I just think, what's the big deal? Even if it is Bama, and so what? What's the big deal? If there's somebody who wants to give him an NIL deal for $1.5 million to go to Bama, that's not illegal.
But you know how it goes though, especially if you're outside of the SEC. See, the SEC has always had this stigma of being paid even before NIL. I mean, they're like the old Southwestern Conference, as we know with SMU and what's been going on down there. So the SEC has always been looked at as cockeyed when it came down to shenanigans and under-table deals and underhanded deals. And it's always nice to look at the SEC and say, see, that's the only reason why you win. You've been paying players.
Look why. Saban was an average coach at Michigan State. They were decent. They didn't do anything special. He sucked in the NFL. And then all of a sudden he has this great success at Alabama.
Well, so I can see it first.
Oh, yeah. But I mean, he had major success at Bama. Right?
But you know what? At the same time, I think you go through your growing pains.
I'm just saying, people are going to say, "Oh, he couldn't get it done there. He couldn't get it done there." What is he doing here?
You know why? I think
that's just the nature of the beast.
If you ask me, and you wanted somewhat of a non-biased answer, even though it may come across as biased, look at all the top players are typically in the South. Now you have your pockets up there in the Midwest, in particular with Michigan and Ohio State, their high school system. But when you're in the South, man, these players are going to gravitate towards you. And if you're a good coach anyway, you're going to be able to grow these players to become quality players. And when he came to LSU, those players came to him. And by the way, Louisiana per capita has the most NFL players. So it's not hard to believe that those high school players that grow up wanting to play for LSU, well, they're going to be there whether Curly Holman is there or whether Jerry Donato was there or now even Nick Saban was there. They're going to show up. And if he's that good of a coach, he's going to coach those guys up. The success is going to come. Those players are going to be nurtured. And then he'll get a chance to bounce to a traditional power, like in Alabama, to where you do have to do your recruiting, but people all over the country still know Alabama. And if you're doing almost anything there, they're going to come like they did with Gene Stallings when he had Derek Lassick, a running back from New York City in Babylon, coming down there being their primary running back during their national championship year. So, yeah, I can see how all of those things work themselves out. I can see how Nick Saban, at least in his case, became a good coach. Jerry Donato at LSU, he had Kevin Falk. I just can't believe he even got a second chance after leaving Vanderbilt. So,
I'm not saying that Saban did anything. I'm just saying that I could see how people
absolutely. The ones who aren't winning are the ones who are going to complain the most. I see a lot of Big Ten fans, not Big Ten fans as a whole, but typically Ohio State fans, because typically they're on the cusp of being a national champion. Michigan now has entered the fray to where they along with Ohio State, may be the two Big Ten teams that have a chance at a national championship. So I can see their fan base saying things like that. And then out west, since USC, Reggie Bush days, nothing's going on out there. You get an Oregon team that teases you. You get a Utah team that gets beaten up but still wins the conference. They don't have anything to offer. So I can see why they're on the outside. They would think that way. But, that's just the way it's been. And, hell, we're running out of time here. Hey, let's talk about some baseball. The deadline has come and gone in baseball. You know what? And I haven't really gotten a chance to see all of the players that had come in, but I did see some of the players. And you talked about Justin Verlander. You spoke to me, you messaged me about that a little earlier, and he's back with the Astros. What are your thoughts on that?
That's a big pickup for them. He was with them before, so he'll just slide into that rotation. He's been pitching extremely well. He has a 3.15 ERA, and he becomes their ace. If they get into the playoffs, he's your game one starter. I think that's a big pickup for them.
Yeah,
big pickup.
Even at his age, he's shown that he could pitch. He was just around a horrible team up in New York with the Mets, and he's won 2 World Series with them. So like you said, he's the anchor right now, the anchor coming back, the anchor of that pitching staff. And they're 13 games over 500 right now, which is bad for their recent standards. The Astros have been one of those teams that have been pretty dominant the past couple of years. They're a half a game behind their in-state nemesis, which are the Texas Rangers, who got Max Scherzer just on the 29th of July. So the Mets give up the 2 big acquisitions they've had, Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander, and now they're in the same division. They may even go against each other at some point.
Yeah, I'm sure the coaching staff is lining up their rotations accordingly, looking at their head-to-head matchups. And, so, that's going to be real interesting. As you mentioned, the Rangers are up, a game?
Game, yeah.
I'm sure the Astros think Verlander's going to take them over the hump. Rangers going to have some incentive. Hey, they got Verlander. We got to step it up. But maybe Scherzer gives them a bump. And, they're going to fight it out. Good luck.
I think the biggest donkey here, I don't want to use other people's term, but a bad overall circumstance was the Mets. And they got rid of these 2 guys. They had to let them go because you got to respect them enough to do that. You brought them there because you thought you were going to be in World Series contention. That organization has absolutely imploded. Billy Epper and Steve Cohen, the owner, oh, my God. They're actually paying Justin Verlander to go. They're paying most of his salary up until 2025. And it depends on if he triggers his option and all that other stuff. And
right,
he spoke about what the Mets had told him, that they're going to take a step back in 2024. Wait a minute. What's this year? This is already a step back. 2024 is just going to be worse. And they allegedly told him that 2025, 2026 is probably when we're going to try to make our move. So in other words, we're rebuilding. We're rebuilding right now for a team just last season that was talking about the World Series. You're rebuilding in 2025, 2026, maybe when you make your move to do things. They're going to get up. They're not going after big contracts, according to Justin Verlander, and what he said was told to him by the Mets organization. They're not going after the big contract players. They're just going to try to cheat this thing together and kind of lick their wound from all of this money they just spent because it was ridiculous. And I think that it was good for them to give these veterans, these legendary veterans who will be Hall of Famers, a chance to latch on with somewhere else that may give these guys an opportunity to win another World Series.
How about the Angels? And everybody thought they were going to trade Ohtani, but they went out. They tried to improve their ball club. They wanted to show him, hey, let's get you in the playoffs. Maybe they think they can re-sign him. Good luck to them. I mean, they have a hill to climb. But I don't know if they, Giolito, Lucas Giolito, he's on the White Sox, so I saw him a lot. He had a good season a couple years ago, but he kind of took a step back. But does he get rejuvenated going to a team that has playoff possibilities? We'll see. But I think they probably need to add some offense also. Mm-hmm. And I didn't see a move that they made in that department. So they'll probably come up short, but at least they're showing Ohtani, hey, we want to win.
Yeah, they want to win, but can they even afford him when he comes around? And if you can't afford him, how are you going to put pieces around him to continue winning or be formidable at all? I mean, we don't even know what the number is for him. I'm not going to keep talking about Mike Trout playing agent saying the $600 million mark, but there's going to be some money paid and some hefty money paid, and I wonder if they'll be able to field a team around him that's going to help them consistently get to the playoffs.
Don't let them get into the playoffs and he dominates, hits 450 with 7 home runs and 2 shutouts. Because then now we're talking $700 million.
Oh, see now we're talking about they just have to give him a part ownership. I mean, seriously, it'll come down to part ownership or whatever, man. Because
something now,
if he gets to the playoffs and he puts up those ridiculous numbers, which he is capable of doing, man, he has them against the wall. And
you saw the World Baseball Classic.
The Baseball Classic?
The World Baseball Classic. You saw what he did there.
Yeah, exactly. When the stage doesn't bother him. The World Series is big to us because we've grown up around the World Series. To players that aren't from here, the world, the baseball,
WBC.
Oh God, what's going on here? The WBC, that's a big deal for them. Some teams just take time out. They specifically look at that, especially some of the players, the foreign players whose current team will never be in contention. They look at that as the big deal. And so, all eyes were on him out there in Ohtani, and he showed up there. The World Series, I don't believe, would be any different if he had a chance to go there with the Angels or anyone else. Now, I'm going to edit the hell out of this show, man. But anyway, I'm telling you, bro, all of a sudden, man, tongue-tied, etc. But yeah, I mean, the money he should be looking for, that's I can't even put a cap on it. I mean, he's going to get what he gets. The Dodgers, the Yankees, Boston, and Philadelphia are probably the only 4 teams that can do it.
The crazy thing is there's going to be a bidding war probably. If the Dodgers offer 600, the Yankees offer 625.
Yep.
And if the Dodgers really want him, they 650. Yankees really want him, 700. There you go.
Number to auction.
But talking about the WBC, we got FIBA basketball coming up.
Oh, yeah.
What's up with your boy Luka, all in shape now?
All in shape because they talked about it a little while ago. I think about 3 weeks ago, it was mentioned that we would like to see Luka in better shape because we think it hampered him last season to interfere with him being a better player, and his conditioning wasn't really up to par. He heard that, whether it was from the organization, whether the head coach or someone else, he heard it. And so he's
getting going to stay in shape come the NBA season?
Was he
doing it for FIBA?
Maybe the FIBA is more important than the championship.
If Mark Cuban saw that photo of him, he probably got on the phone. Hey, what's going on here, man? You better stay in shape.
But you know what? They're going to put the onus on him when he comes back and tries to play in the NBA. If he starts putting on the poundage, man, social media is going to go crazy. The NBA is going to go crazy about it. They're going to have the before and after picture.
What would be real crazy if he gets some athleticism and starts dunking on people? Like, it'd just be that much better.
Man, we were just talking about I was just talking about a while ago when he said he was going to add a sky hook to his game. And I didn't see it too much last season. I didn't watch him a lot, but I didn't see it. They would have highlighted it if he did it. Yeah, if he has, he doesn't even have to show some athleticism, dunk on occasion. But but just being thinner, man, being able to play an entire game and not being so fatigued to where the turnovers become a thing. And I think that had a lot to do with it. But right now he's in shape. FIBA seems to be more important than a championship in the NBA. And we're going to find out if that is indeed a fact when the season does happen. And sticking with this NBA, our last thing of the night, the Doc Dr. J doesn't have LeBron James on his top 10 greatest players of all time. Is that a slight, or is it deliberate, or is there something behind it?
Well, I saw where he said that his ring chasing was the reason. So he's not saying he's not a top 10 player talent. Yeah. He's saying that him ring chasing, bouncing from team to team to team to team, hurts him as far as his all-time status. You know, now, that's Dr. J. Who am I to disagree with the doc?
Exactly. I mean, certain greats, you hear from them and you listen to them more than you listen to even Charles Barkley. You know what I mean? Charles Barkley says things in more comedy, but when Dr. J speaks, or even if MJ spoke on occasion, well, based on the plays he's playing, I wouldn't listen to him either. But Dr. J, at least, you know, we can respect what he said. But the only thing I can say about that statement, especially after you have mentioned it, is he didn't like the ring jumping and this and that. But then someone mentioned, hey, Steph Curry's not on your list either. And that's when he said, well, as you realize, my guys that I had picked are all retired. So that makes me wonder, wait, is LeBron not on there because he's retired? But then you go back to what he did say. Hey,
so when he retires, he'll put him in at like number 8 or something.
We're going to put LeBron in there at number 8?
No, I'm saying Doc will put him in around 8 after LeBron retires.
Exactly. So you might as well not even be on, because
you're now eligible to be on Dr. J's list. Let's see, number 8. There you go.
But he put Nate Archibald on that list, bruh. I mean, hey,
he played against Nate.
Exactly. So. It's Doc's list. So I'm not gonna go after a legend like that because he has his list, man. Because I've watched what he's done and he's played against these guys.
And when you're a player, you're a great player, and then you think about somebody who gave you the work. You know, maybe he didn't give other guys work, but he gave me work. So he's on my list.
Because you know what? Kobe Bryant might have Bruce Bowen on his list. You never know, man. And that's just how it goes. Some players are just a pain in your butt where you're dominating everybody else. This one player just happens to have your numbers, almost like boxing, man.
But I think for the record, Kobe's guy was T-Mac.
Huh?
I think for the record, Kobe's guy was T-Mac.
T-Mac? Oh, really?
Yeah, because he's 6'8", 6'9", you know, can handle the ball, could shoot, athletic. That I think that was Kobe's guy, the one that gave him the most problems.
Well, on that, we will put an end to.
He gave a lot of people problems.
Who, Kobe?
Well, of course, Kobe, but T-Mac, yeah.
Oh, yeah, of course. Come on, you know, I think just the other day somebody might have disrespected T-Mac. I can't remember who it is. It just popped in my mind when you mentioned his name. Somebody disrespected.
Paul Pierce? Paul Pierce, that punk ass hater.
What is up with Paul Pierce, man? He's always trying to be relevant.
I don't know. For
even
one,
outside of basketball.
I don't care how he got the name The Truth. He is not the truth. I can think of 30 basketball players I would call the truth before him. Screw Paul Pierce.
And lived up to it. Unbelievable, Paul Pierce, man. This guy makes himself an item regardless of the sport. At a boxing match, he'll say it. In a basketball game, he'll say it. If they're kicking a soccer ball around,
he has to give the name up to somebody. Get out of here, man.
My man has copyrights on it, man. But anyway, as I was saying, this is the close of episode number 35 of the Sports Bag Bros podcast. We're hoping to see you again. More than likely you would. And if this isn't edited, don't blame me. Just listen to it, man. We're having a real conversation. Do you edit real conversations? I'm Trav. He's biased. Catch you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.